Old business, assessment update for Mr. Hounsome.
So back in March, we previewed a little bit the new assessment that was given for the, to be given at that time for the first time in Missouri. Assessment changes aligned to the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and to measure the Missouri learning standards for the first time. And several challenges and a whole new testing environment, so I thought it might be good to come back and update now that we've finished, unless you know how things went. Some lessons learned and some feedback from teachers and students about the process a little bit. So just as a reminder, on the screen is a list of the district assessments that we've been giving. Grades 3 through 8, all students take a math and English language arts test. If you're in grades 5 and 8, you also take a science test. The science is a grade span test instead of a grade level. Starting at 8th, some, and then 9 through 12 end of course assessments. I've listed all the subjects there. There are 4 required ones that we give: Algebra 1, Biology, English 2, and Government. We still give 3 non-required tests: Geometry, Algebra 2, and English 1 this year. I'll also speak with you a little bit about the new junior level ACT test that was given, and then the ASVAB test that we've been doing a little bit but ties into the ACT. So we'll spend quite a bit of time about the grade level assessment changes. This is where the most changes took place. The first bullet there is an online administration. So for the first time ever, we gave the MAP test online on computers to students starting in 3rd grade and then up through 8th grade. And I don't know if you followed much national news, but there were some states that this turned into almost a catastrophic failure. Testing systems shut down. They had to shut down testing across the entire state. They were really worried about getting it through. Here in Missouri, things went really well. We had some small glitches here and there with computers losing connectivity, but those were resolved quickly. The overall system performed well. I will give DESE a lot of credit. They responded very appropriately to any issues that we did see, and they responded quickly. There were some issues in the beginning that it was taking a while to get students back onto the test if they had lost connectivity. But after seeing that, they changed their procedures and processes so that we could do it almost instantly. And I think they had a lot at stake for this testing to go well, certainly. And they worked very hard, and they gave districts, I would say they gave districts a lot of very good support through this. Overall, I'm going to give you some feedback here. We'll sprinkle some feedback here as we go through. Overall, the computer testing, it certainly eliminated some of the logistical headaches that you have with MAP testing as far as counting every book and making sure every page is there and all of that. I mean, it's all handled at once. And even though the test took a little longer than advertised, which I'll talk about some, the overall testing time for kids seemed to be reduced as compared to the pencil and paper testing. If you weren't a 5th or 8th grader, they tested a lot, so I'll set them aside. But if you were in the grades that just took English and math, you were through with math in one setting, in a single session in a morning, and in English in the same session. There weren't multiple days as they were used to in the past, and it really streamlined things quite a bit. So I would say it went really well. Now, there was a lot of preparation. Our technology people were on top of everything, and Ginger and Rob and everyone that set up on the back end on our server to make everything work, they did a really good job, and our system worked really well. So we were proud of that. Testing the Missouri Learning Standards for the first time. Now there, we'll probably find out when we get our results back how we did on the switch to the new standards. The only feedback we have about that is asking kids, or when kids would tell teachers how the test went. I think the general overall feeling we got from kids was that the English language arts was pretty similar to, they felt, to what they had done before. They felt really comfortable. They thought the math was a little more challenging than what they had seen in previous years. I'd say that's just a feeling from kids. But again, when we get results back, we'll see us and across the state how we're doing with those Missouri Learning Standards. Mentioned to you last time, also introduced were performance tasks for grades 5 and 8. This is for the first time teachers would teach a scripted lesson, and then kids would follow up that scripted lesson in class taking an assessment. I thought this might be one of our bigger challenges to make work, but honestly, everything went perfect. There was no problems, no issues reported. It just all went really well and really just blended into the whole testing environment, so that was really good. Enhanced technology item types. If you remember when we talked about this before, we pulled up the practice test so that you could see a little bit what it looked like and some of the tools that kids had to use. Our teachers did a really good job of getting kids access to those practice tests so that the kids reported when they sat down to take the test, they felt really comfortable with the tools. The tools weren't a challenge for them. They knew how to use them. They knew how to use the technology because teachers had gone through the practice tests with them and they were at home in using it. So I thought that was really good. Again, when we get results back, we'll see how we did on some enhanced item types. Our scheduling did have to be revised from what I showed you at that meeting. The tests took longer than they were advertised. They were advertised about an hour and a half, and they were taking about 2.5 to 2.5. Some students were taking up to 3 hours. But that's 2.5 with a break. We could pause the test. Everyone could use the restroom, get a short break, and then come back and resume the testing since it was online, and all of that worked very well. So lesson learned for next year. If we give this test again, we'll redo our schedules a little bit. Student and teacher feedback. Some of the things that we asked kids was for those that have taken MAP testing before, their preference of doing it on the computer versus taking it on pencil and paper. And I would say the responses were fairly well split. I would say it was about 50-50. The younger kids skewed more toward the computer. The older kids at the junior high level skewed more toward pencil and paper. And part of that, when I talked with Mrs. Fulton, was there was a lack of confidence on their part that the results were safe and would get transmitted, and they were just nervous about their answers getting there and not losing their answers. Some of them, there was a split a little bit. There were many opinions about whether they preferred writing out answers or typing. Some preferred the editing ability of typing. Others, typing was a challenge for them when composing longer responses. We specifically looked at the very young grades, 3rd and 4th grade, for if typing would have an effect on their assessment. The longest answer that they were required to enter was at the 3rd grade level was a paragraph. Now, a paragraph is quite a bit for a 3rd grader to type. So we are, as part of the technology plan that's being revised now, we are looking at the types of technology instruction we're doing at the elementary, not just for assessment, but I think keyboarding and using computers and the things we're doing in classrooms, we're looking at the tools we're giving elementary kids and the skills we're giving them, and this kind of ties in a little bit. So we will look at how we deliver instruction about technology to those kids. Keyboarding would be a part of it. So that does play into this. Some of the teachers said that they felt like on computers there was actually less testing anxiety for the kids. They felt like because we give our common assessments on computer, because they do lots of learning activities on the computer, sitting down to take a test on the computer, they felt like they were pretty at home, as opposed to having the official books handed out and saying, now open to everyone, leave it closed, now open to page 1, you may begin. They felt like really they got a feel, especially at the younger level, that kids were pretty comfortable and there wasn't the level of test anxiety that there was in the past. Now that's pretty qualitative data. I don't know if I can back that up, but I'm just reporting a little bit. Kids preferred taking it on desktops versus laptops. I think, which makes sense, a little larger screen, the mouse is there. We did have mice on everything, but if they had a choice, they preferred the desktop. Maybe one of the largest issues we had is just third and fourth graders logging in correctly. And when you're getting 25 to third graders logging in, it was helpful to have multiple adults in the room, just so that process worked okay. But the overall feedback, again, some of it was mixed. Some liked the computer, some preferred pencil and paper. The teacher side, just purely on the teacher side, you might imagine they preferred the online method just because of all the test books and keeping track of that and managing all of it. So,
What about the special needs population? How did they adjust to online?
I don't know that there wasn't a difference. Now, the highest needs, special needs kids don't take this assessment. They take the MAP-A, which is also now an online assessment, but it's online on the teacher side giving it. But we didn't have any reports of any problems manipulating the tools or anything else. So I think it went pretty well. I told you in March that we would get a much quicker return of results. We would get results back within 10 days of the test closing. That has changed. That is not true.
I'm guessing it's not less
Not a
than 10
shorter
days.
time period.
It's not a shorter time period, no, it will be a little longer. There was, the department, DESE, found out and notified us pretty quickly that there would be software to report the results, not to grade. The grading is going on, but the software to send out reports to school districts is delayed in being ready. Their best estimate is at the latest we would have our scores back by the end of June. Now, that sounds late, but that's actually even earlier than before on the pencil paper, and there have been times not that long ago when we would get scores back in October.
Right.
So, it's not as quick as promised, but
That's why you
okay.
always be careful with your promises.
Because
Because now it's going to feel late, but it's actually earlier than normal.
Well, yeah. And one thing I've learned, as we talk about future assessments, I would like to sit here, I would like to be able to tell you to what the future of assessment looks like in Missouri, but quite frankly, no one would be able to predict that accurately. In conjunction with rewriting the Missouri Learning Standards, which is to be presented to the State Board in October, once that is done, a new assessment will be written for the state of Missouri to be given for the first time in the spring of 2016. This is 15, 17 for the first time, which means we have 1 year next year, spring of 2016, for which we do not really have a test. The legislature has taken all money has removed any funds that would be paid to the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium from which this test was built. So this test appears to be out. This appears to be a 1 year test that we put a lot of work in. That we would do something different next spring for a 1 year bridge, and then we would do something different the following spring that would then maybe last a few years. So
Don't
this year was new,
overpromise.
next year
Yeah.
was new, the one following that would be new, but would stay for a while. I think that's the plan.
Was last year's new?
No.
No,
last year
okay,
was
so
one
th-
that- This
okay.
was the first
This was
year
the
of
first
new, could be the
it had
first of
changed in a
3
while.
years in a row with different assessments potentially.
Yeah.
All along the way, we've had the testing figured out, and then it changes. So I don't know that we have an answer what we'll be doing next spring. It doesn't appear that we'll be doing this again. I may come back in a month and say, yes, we are. Who knows?
So we'll have at least 4 years in a row where it's been different.
Yes.
Last year, this
Potentially.
year.
I
Okay.
hate to predict potentially.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'll keep you updated as we learn more there and as some decisions are made.
Yeah.
I don't think we have there is no answer to give yet. There's no decision that's been made.
Yeah.
So, the following slides are pretty quick. Is anything before we move on from the grade level assessment changes that's new for this year?
Just read where they had given 1.8 million
sessions of testing across the state.
I think the email on Tuesday said that the state of Missouri had given about 75% of the expected tests, and so school districts are starting to finish up now. We finished our last test we gave on Monday.
Whatever made
this week.
them think they could have results in a week.
End of the course assessments, nothing really new here. These have been given online for quite some time, for the last 5 or 6 years probably. They are aligned to the new standards. However, it was the same platform, same everything, same questions. They simply made sure to pick the questions that were aligned to the new the already existing questions. They made sure the ones they picked aligned to the new standards was really the only change. Results have already started coming back for those. The turnaround time for EOC test is 5 days after closing. And those are included in the student's grade. They do count as a regular unit tests. And so results are already coming back, and we finished those. Today was the last day of end of course testing and all of that.
And those are given in what subjects and at what levels?
So those start typically in what you think of a high school class. In math, we give it in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. In science is biology. English, we do English 1 and English 2, so freshman and sophomore English. And in social studies, we give it in the U.S. government.
Okay. So the other testing is pre-high school, and this is, we're
Yes.
shifting to high school, yeah.
This is
Okay.
credit-bearing classes, so there are a lot of 8th graders that take the Algebra
Oh,
1 test,
right.
but it's credit-bearing
Yeah.
courses. The decision that we will need to make moving forward is whether we continue to give the non-required test, weighing out the benefit that we get from that versus the testing load of our students. There were one test that we've given in the past that we did not this year, and the primary concern was just to reduce the amount of testing load on kids, and that was the American history test. We held on to the English and math test, so that'll be a decision that we will need to work through in the future and kind of see what value those tests still have for us. So. The ACT and ASVAB was given on Tuesday. They were both given on Tuesday, April 28th at the high school. All juniors took the ACT. This was new for the state of Missouri this year, in which all juniors received a free ACT test. Just because the high school basically had to be shut down to give the ACT, we also worked out to give the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, on the same day to all sophomores. I have to tell you, the level of planning and details for that day at the high school, it was a monumental task. And those guys over there, and it was handled beautifully.
I can tell you one senior who was really happy about that.
I can name another
Loved
one.
it. We probably have a couple. Loved it.
But while the seniors were practicing for graduation and having a nice time, the planning that the high school staff did was just wonderful, and it all went really smooth. And we are really in favor of that the state will continue giving that ACT to all juniors. It's a great opportunity for everyone to have one. So we would be in favor of that continuing. But they did a really nice job of getting everyone in their place. Pretty strict, I shouldn't say pretty, very strict protocols and rules for the ACT, and it was all handled really well. That's a sum up of testing. I would say it went really smooth. A lot of communication and preparation went into it. I sent out an email thanking the teachers and all the staff that were involved in it, because this was a lot of work. There was a lot of anxiety about the new test. And thanks to their hard work and just being on top of everything, it went really well.
Are there ACT results available immediately?
I don't know that, no.
No.
It's pencil and paper, so they
Oh,
will
it's
be
still
sent
pencil,
away.
oh, okay.
I hope it stays pencil and paper, because we were required to test all kids at the exact same time. And if we're testing over 300 students at
Yeah.
once, devices will be a problem,
Right.
and our network
Yeah.
will be a problem.
Yeah,
So I'm in
okay.
favor of leaving it that with
Okay.
pencil and paper.
Okay.
They're gonna keep the same rules.
Yeah.
Thinking about that.
You had a person or persons from DESI kind of
Yeah.
monitoring, and what was their
I did,
feedback?
thank you. I had that noted here. So we did receive an official quality assessment visit from DESI. Schools are randomly selected beforehand, so he was at Rolla Middle School. So he watched our testing. He went in, sat in a testing session. And then interviewed myself as the district test coordinator and Drina Fleshman as the school test coordinator, and left really impressed. He said it all looked really good, that we had everything in line, and he had no recommendations for improvement, so it
Great.
went really well.
Like that.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Greg.